asleep, but there's nothing there, so you don't have to read it. But
Hollywood, marker.
and then you get out of the shot.
What happens when you catch your finger?
Yeah, if you catch your finger in there, you scream.
It's part of the
Okay. We will be talking more about sync next class period, but sync is a very important aspect of television and film sound. So we'll be talking about some gotchas. So where we left off last time, we were talking about microphones, and we're not quite done talking about microphones. We did talk about this kind of microphone, which we passed around this mic and showed it to you, and you can see through the screen quite easily, and you can see the gold-plated diaphragm in there, and so we know that since this is a fairly coarse screen and there's only one layer of screen there, the wind can go through the screen very easily. And so when we talk, we make little pops usually with P's and T's and S's and things like that. And so if we're close at all to this kind of a microphone, we're going to have a major problem with pops. So we use this external screen a few inches in front of it, and so the singer would be looking at the mic through the screen, which is going to stop most of the pops. Now, why are we in love with this large diaphragm condenser microphone? Because of all mics, it is the most sensitive. If you're going to record something very complicated like a symphony orchestra or a choir or something where you have multiple people performing on different instruments or singing, that wave is extremely complicated. If you were to freeze it and see that it's extremely complicated, and it takes a very light and flexible diaphragm to be able to respond to that complicated wave, and that's what you get in a large diaphragm condenser microphone like this one. And so most professional voice and singers, etc., are going to sing with one of these, but with a pop screen in front of it. But if you're recording at a little distance from it, then the pops don't become the concern, so you don't need the screen in front of it. So if you're going to record a musical group, you're best off using one of these. Okay, we have two. We've recently given another one. We haven't tested it yet, but we have a couple of these large diaphragm condenser microphones. Okay, and before I move on, this is a large diaphragm condenser microphone, which makes you think that there is another thing called a small diaphragm condenser microphone, and this is one of those. This is a directional. By the way, you can tell a directional mic usually by the fact that the sound goes in more than one place. If there's only one way for the sound to get in, like these microphones I'm wearing, then it can't be directional. But if there's more than one way for the sound to get in, it does that so we can tell which direction the sound is coming from. And you can see that there are vents on the side as well as on top for where the sound can get in. So this is a directional microphone. This is a German brand. This is kind of this isn't the Rolls-Royce of German mics, but this would be the Toyota maybe of German mics or something like that. A very good quality not the highest price, but a very good quality brand of microphones. And what do you use? A small condenser, diaphragm condenser mic. You can use this to record complicated sounds that are not really, really soft. If the sounds are really soft, the large diaphragm is going to be better. And they almost always use these to get the cymbals and the snare drums on a drum set. Okay, again, that's a complicated sound wave, and so a moving coil microphone is not going to be good at it. So you want a condenser microphone, but you don't need the large diaphragm, which are large microphones, obviously. So the smaller diaphragm will work in that case just as well, because even though it's complicated, it's also very loud. And so you usually have, well, you have a diagram coming up, a couple of these to pick up the snare drums and the cymbals and things at the top of the drum set. So we have a couple of them. Now this microphone we've had for a while, and it was a mystery to us for a while. This is an Audio Technica, which is a very good Japanese brand. And as you can see, it's directional. In fact, it's fairly narrowly directional. But we could never make it work. As I say, it's a relatively expensive mic and a good one, a condenser, or a small diaphragm directional condenser. And then we finally tried it with phantom power. This mic has no place to put a battery, and it will not work in any situation where you can't feed it phantom power. So in a studio situation, or if you have a mixer, a field mixer that will put out phantom power, this is a great mic. Without that, it is a paperweight. And it comes with a little windscreen. We'll talk more about the various forms of windscreens.
So question for you.
Yeah.
Can phantom power, I mean, cords are long, can it be a really long distance?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's very little current in phantom power, so the microphone cable is able to carry it. Actually, with XLR cable, you can go hundreds of feet if you need to. So yeah, it'll go as far as you need to.
The purpose of the phantom power is just to set up a voltage across a diaphragm or something?
Yeah.
Or is it part of a
It does two things. On a true condenser microphone, it's a polarizing voltage, which tends to be around 300 volts or something like that between the two plates, the diaphragm and the back plate. And also condenser microphones, including electrets, require an amplifier in the microphone. So in both of these mics, there are amplifiers built in. The signal from the capacitor is so weak that it really wouldn't survive the trip up the cable without picking up a lot of noise. So that you put a amplifier in the microphone itself. So all of these condenser or electrets have an amplifier in them. So they have to have some kind of power. Don't use very much power, but the battery, this was battery operated. Battery and these will last for months. Because it's not using much power, but it is using, but if the battery dies, then you get no signal. So, good morning. Oh, yeah. All right. Now, we've been talking about we're demonstrating actually double system sound because we are recording here two ways. We're recording on the camera that we're shooting, which is that direction, and we're also recording on at least one device over here separately. And so most film, and of course we don't shoot really film anymore, but most film style shooting is done with the audio recorded separately, or at least backed up separately. So the purpose of the slate, and we demonstrated that at the beginning of the shoot, the purpose of the slate is to give a reliable synchronization point, because if you're recording the audio separately, you don't have any picture to go with it. So the clap is your signal. And the reason we say marker before the clap is because those of us who have spent some time editing know that when you're listening to an audio file, or you're looking at an audio file. Oh, thank you. All right. There are various pops and things, and it's hard to know which one is the synchronizing clap. And so before we give that synchronizing clap, we say marker. So you would read, anything that's on there. You don't read the whole thing, but scene 13, take 7, and marker, clap. Okay. And then the editor knows, right, that the click that you hear right after the word marker is the one that counts. And we, as I mentioned earlier, for the sake of the editor, when you're trying to find the clap and you're fast forwarding through the video looking for the clap, if it's like that, if it's done like that, this is like 5 frames or something like that. It's very hard to find, because you can go right past it and not see that there was a clap like that. So if you take this into the scene open, then the editor knows it's open, the clap is yet to come. If it's closed, the clap has occurred. So you know whether to hunt forward or backward to find the clap. So that's a convenience for the editor. Now, one thing when you're handling the slate, it's fairly important as you're clapping that you hold the slate part, the bottom part, still and bring the clap down on it, because if this is moving as you're clapping, then it's hard to find the right frame, because this is going to be fuzzy. So you have to find the first frame where the two come together, and that's why you have the stripes on here, so you can distinguish it from the background. But if this is moving, then it's blurred, and you can get close, but you won't necessarily arrive on the right frame. So you need to hold it still, so that this part isn't moving, and you can then distinguish the clap. Okay, some of the things that we can use in recording sound. I brought. What do they do with it? Oh, here it is, right in front of me. This is a Zoom H4n. It's a very, very popular little recorder. This is not a transmitter. This is a digital audio recorder, and this will record up to 4 channels. The 2 channels from the mic on top, and we'll talk about this mic configuration a little later, why they're crossed like that. It'll record those, and then there are 2 XLR inputs on the bottom, so you can connect 2 other microphones, so you can record a total of 4 microphones on this little recorder. This was a sensation when it came out, maybe 20 years ago, something like that, because it's small and very good quality and all of that. These days, this is a dinosaur because it's big, and the one that I've got in my pocket, well, that's a transmitter. This is the replacement kind of thing. This takes one microphone, but this is a digital audio recorder, and where we have this on for a backup. The first show we did, by the way, the wireless system failed, and had we not had the backup, we wouldn't have had any audio, any usable audio. So it's a good thing. Pulling this down here, it's a good thing to have a backup. So this is kind of a replacement for this. You can see there's quite a difference in size. This is still a very good recorder. Okay, so double system sound gives you more flexibility, and a couple of other things. This is our most recent acquisition here in the club, and what's the model number on this? I should know.
H6.
What is it?
H6.
Oh, H6. Yeah. So same manufacturer, in the size that we had here, with 2 channels. This or 4 channels. This has 6 channels. You can. They come with microphones that you can attach to the top. If you're recording a musical group with either of these, you can put this on a tripod or a lighting stand. It has a screw on it, a place to screw into it here. And you can use this, these are condenser mics, so you can use this to get the overall recording, and then you can plug other mics into it. So this one will take the 2 built-in mics, which we've removed right now, and then 4 other mic channels, and records to an SD card. So this just came out this year or so. Okay, yeah, Jim.
What's the cost of those kinds of things?
Trying to remember.
I think that one's 700.
Okay, about 700. This, I think, was closer to 200 or 300. Do you remember? Anybody? No, it's been some years since I had it. So
And the one in your pocket, 200.
it's about 200.
And how long does the one in your pocket record? How
How what? I'm sorry.
long?
How many hours?
How many
can
hours
do
can
it?
you record?
Oh, well, depending on the size of the card, I think the batteries, a set of batteries will last 10 hours or something like that. So you use a little dry cell, triple A's if I remember right, double A's, triple A's I
Those are
think.
triple.
Yeah. So yeah, it'll last all day, and on a shoot where you're going to be shooting all day, you'd want to start off with fresh batteries in the morning always, but
For,
even if you only used it half a day, you want to.
for prosumer work, Zoom has even a cheaper one, don't they? 2-channel, the H2N or H1N. Zoom. I'm sorry.
I forgot my hearing aids today,
Oh,
so I'm having
sorry.
trouble
I was
hearing you.
talking on I was saying Zoom has which I have, is a cheaper one yet, about $100, a little over. That does good recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all
It takes 2 channels.
They all record really well, and
Which one is it?
The Zoom H1N, I think, or
Yeah.
H2N.
right.
It's a small. It's similar to that one, but less complicated and fewer channels.
It's a little bigger than the one in my pocket, but not as big as this. Yeah, so there's all kinds of interesting toys out there for audio recording. Now, the advantage, of course, of an independent record thing like this is it lets let's say that you have a horse that rides up out of the distance with a rider on it, an actress, and she's riding into the clearing, and she's talking as she goes.
Oh.
How are you going to capture that? well, you either have to have a transmitter on her, because there's no way that you can get that with a microphone. So you're going to have a transmitter on her, or a digital audio recorder. And with her moving like that at a distance, you could easily get beyond the range of the radio mic, the wireless mic. And so wearing the digital audio recorder is going to be probably the safest thing to do to get a signal. So you can put one of these on each actor and use it for background if nothing, backup if nothing else. So, all right. Moving on. Sometimes you may be called upon to record something that is also an event that uses a PA system. And so you may be need to go in there. The PA system is already installed, and somehow get an audio signal in the auditorium, and you have your camera in the back shooting over the top of the audience. So it's not convenient to run a mic cord up to the podium. So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple of different things that you can do. I didn't bring it. I have one like this, but see this little thing here. If you can buy that, and it has one female and two male. So that's a mic. You can use that as a mic splitter. It's a crude way of working, but it actually does work quite well. And so you can tap into the mic line that the PA is using. They won't notice the difference. It reduces the volume so slightly that there won't be any noticeable difference. So you plug a cord coming from the podium mic into this. Then you plug your recorder into that one, and you continue this to the PA system. So that little splitter will work. If you want to be more elegant about that, you can get one of these, which does the same thing, and theoretically matching everything and whatnot with slightly better quality. Although I don't know that you really notice a difference. But this is a mic splitter. So that's one thing you can do, is you can use the same mic that the PA system is using, and you split it off into your equipment. Then what do you do with it at that point? Well, if it's a long way from the back to the front, you can take some kind of digital audio recorder and just record it there coming out. Now, you're going to pick up the same sound coming out of the PA speakers, so you just pick that up with the microphone on your camera, but then you marry the two later on, the digital sound that you got with the microphone. This is going to be way better sound. So then you can put the two together in your editing and have really good sound without having to run a wire all that way. Some other options, third option down, you can put a stand next to the PA mic or tape to it. Sometimes the PA guy is not going to want to let you tap into his mic, because he's afraid that you don't know what you're doing and you're going to mess up his job. So that wouldn't be particularly surprising if he doesn't want to let you do that. So you may have to put another mic, depending on what you're using. But if they're sensitive about this, I have sometimes taken a little mic like this, and if this is the PA mic, taken some gaff tape, some black tape, and just tape it right to the mic. and then you can put that into a recorder or into a cable going to your camera, whatever you want. So that's you can usually get by with that. If that's not going to work, you can put a stand beside it, but it should be close to the other mic. You don't want your stand to be far away because they'll talk into the PA mic, and so you want the mics to be close together. Another option that you may be able to do, and the PA guy, almost always a guy, occasionally a woman, may be willing to give you a feed out of the mixer. Okay, so if that's possible, then again you can use a digital audio recorder to record that feed, or if your camera is not too far from the mixer position, you can run a wire between the two. I tape some things for my church sometimes, video record some programs, and I always get a feed from the PA guy. Since I'm there with permission, then they're willing to give me the connection. So that's the easiest thing and probably the best sound. Now, if you're not familiar with levels, out of the PA system, out of the mixer, you're going to get a line level feed, which is many times louder than a mic level feed. So this won't be the same as tapping into a microphone. So on your camera, you have a setting that will adjust for line level or mic level. So you want to adjust that for line level. That's hidden in a menu somewhere. Or, because you're probably going to end up with an XLR wire coming out of the mixer, and that won't go into your camera probably, so you're going to need one of these. We've talked about this before, where you put the XLR in and you get a 1/8 inch TRS out. Okay, now on this box there is a switch, line or mic. So you would set that to the line side, and then it's going to, this will automatically diminish the loudness so that it will give what the camera expects as a microphone level input. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm seeing some blank stares here.
So the feed from, if you got it from the board, it won't be affected when they adjust their volume up and down. It'll just be like having it connected to the microphone.
It will probably be affected by what they do on the board, yeah.
So if somebody accidentally mutes it, you're dead.
That's right, yeah. It depends on how they feed it. If they give you feed, a duplication of that mic coming in, then it wouldn't be affected, but they're probably going to give you the total mix.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So anyway, that's not an unusual situation. And desperation, the last point there. If none of the above is possible, point a mic toward PA speaker from as close as possible. So instead of, if you're in the back and the PA guy is not helping, it doesn't want you there basically, not going to give you feed, and you're not able to put a mic on the lectern and that sort of thing, then find where the closest speaker is and just point your mic at that. You can point a shotgun mic at it. The problem is if your shotgun mic is near people and they're talking, you will pick them up on the mic. So if you can run a wire a mic cord to the speaker, you can take a generic mic and basically hang it over the top of the speaker so that it's right in front of it, and get a signal that way. It won't be a perfect signal, but it'll be a lot better than you can pick up from the camera position. So I've done that too. I've probably done all of these things. Another thing you can do, and you can put a recorder with a built-in microphone on the lectern. Just turn it on and let it run. And if you're doing one of these other things and you have a digital audio recorder with a built-in mic, you could do that as a backup, and just see which one comes out better, and use it. All right, how to mic musical groups.
Yeah, so one of the questions that I had as you went through the mics, and maybe you'll do this, but in churches,
Yeah.
The microphones that, like,
Yeah.
you didn't really talk about those in terms of mics, or,
Yeah. Well, the more problem you have with feedback, the closer you have to get the mic to the mouth, and so, yeah, in a lot of situations they have a microphone with a tube that comes out here. The mic sensitive part is here, but it picks up sound with the tube and carries it back right in front of the person's mouth, or a little bit to the side, so you miss some of the popping. Those are just electric microphones with with that kind of thing, or sometimes they have a little thing that comes out and the whole microphone is out there on the end of it. But what you're trying to do is get the best possible sound without it looking ugly. And if you're in a high feedback situation, you've got to get closer to the mouth so that the sound going in the mic is louder, and you can turn it down so that it doesn't pick up the speakers as much and create feedback.
So in general, I mean, you see that in churches all over, so those are better than lapel mics?
Well, they're closer to the mouth is the only thing. So lapel mic is there's a lot of difference between the loudness here and here. So if you're in a situation where you're likely to have feedback or echoey sound or whatever, you may have to get closer. So it's not better. It's just necessity because of the feedback situation. Where you have speakers all around and where sometimes the pastor or whatever will walk around all over the place and walk in front of speakers and that sort of thing, and the closer the mic is, the less likely you're going to have feedback.
Okay, thank you.
All right. How to mic a musical group. I have here either one mic or stereo pair far enough back to get a good blend without too much noise. You have two issues here. One is blend of the group, the overall sound of the group, and then the other is getting each individual voice without too much noise. So the problem with miking them with one mic or stereo pair from a distance is, depending on the room acoustics and depending on the noise, if they're in front of an audience and that sort of thing, you're probably going to pick up quite a bit of noise. And so you'll get the best blend at a little distance, say 8 or 10 feet, with a group like this for 4 or 5 players, so that you're more or less equal distance from all of them. this is a good thing to do that with. This is a stereo pair. We'll talk about why coming up a little bit later. But this will give you a stereo sound that's mixable to audio to mono, and give you a good blend at about the same distance that I'm from you. And so if the noise isn't too bad and if the acoustics are good, this may be all that you need to get your recording. But in most real life situations, probably not the case. So you're probably going to have to mic each of them separately, each instrument separately. If the bass player, for example, is not singing, you can mic the bass, or it probably has most bands of this nature have the instrument would have a pickup in the instrument, so you would plug into that. So you have, in this case, it looks like you have one singer and all the other instruments. You would mic each instrument separately, record them on a multi-track recorder. Oops, I can't seem to stop there. This is the one we have in our control room. This will record up to 10, I guess it is channels at a time. So you record each voice or each instrument separately, and then you create the blend when you play them back and mix them down, and you bring the vocal up a little bit and take the bass down a little bit or whatever. Take the rhythm guitar down a lot, whatever, until you get the blend that you want, which would mean that the person doing the mix down has to have some musical sense, at least have some sense of how, and it may be that the leader of the group wants to be, probably if he's smart or she, would want to be involved in the mix down because he may not like your taste, but you are, in a sense, the person doing the mix down is now a musician judging the, what you want there. But you have a lot of control over how that comes out. Any questions at this point?
Again, I'm thinking of churches. Churches normally just have a soundboard. They don't normally record on that, do they?
Right.
Yeah. So we have this here because we're recording.
Well, we have this here. Occasionally, we do record a musical group in here and multi-track. We don't do very much with the multi-track recording facility, but this was a $600 piece of equipment that solved two problems. But if the mixer in the church, auditorium or whatever, doesn't have the ability to record, which it probably doesn't, then you'd have to have a separate multi-track recorder and have all the connectors. You might have to have all the microphones come into one, be split off and go into each of them. Could be a lot of cabling. Okay. Okay, recording a rock band, yeah, with amps. Okay, there are two ways to get to the signal. We'll talk about this guy here, and he has the guitar in his hand and he has an amp on the floor. He considers the amp as part of his instrument. His sound is not just what comes out of the guitar, it's what comes out of the amp, because there's all kinds of settings on the amp, and typically they have a switch here on the floor. They can change the settings of the sound going into the amp. And so typically they're going to want to have you mic the amp to get the audio sound that comes out of the amp to be the sound. But if he's willing to have you just take the electronic sound coming out of the guitar and not going through the amp, Then you can use one of these guys, and we have several of these. This is what's called a direct box, and guitars always use 1/4-inch connectors, phone plugs. So you go in and out. You put this in the circuit. You have to have a piece of wire with a male connector on each end. You go in and out, and then you have your microphone output going here, and that goes into your mixer. As I say, it's good to have one of these because sometimes an instrumentalist is willing to have you do that, and that's going to be probably a cleaner sound because you're not going to have any acoustic garbage. I mean, this amp here, and then this amp here, and then the guitar over here, they'll all get picked up to some degree in the mic sitting here. So it's not going to be a real clean pickup. So you get a cleaner pickup if you can tap right into the guitar with the direct box, but probably can't. They probably don't want you to do that.
But like you said, I mean, I see these guys with all these pedals, right?
Yeah.
And the sound goes from normal to, you know, and that comes out of the amp. That doesn't come out of the
Right,
guitar.
yeah. So like I say, he considers the sound out of the amp as his sound,
Yeah.
not just the electric stuff coming out of the guitar, because it's greatly modified by the acoustics and the electronics. There's all kinds of settings on those amps.
Right.
So yeah. So again, you're going to need multiple channels to record it. The hardest thing to pick up is a drum set, because a drum set is a set, it's not an instrument. And so you have, look, how many drums here? So 1, 2, 3, 4 drums, 4 sets of cymbals, etc. So there are all different kinds of ways of miking a drum set, but one that I've used and you often see used, and it seems to work pretty well, is the one that's shown in this picture, and that is 2 overhead mics, again, with probably small diaphragm condenser microphones, because this is a very complicated sound they're picking up. These cymbals are, and the snare drums especially, create a very complicated waveform. And so you need a condenser microphone there. So one each on those, and then another mic to pick up the bass drum. A lot of times you're going to put that mic either right in this vent going into it, or inside the drum to where it can hear the hammer hitting the drum from the other side. A lot of times, because they don't want the sustained sound of the drum, they just want the impact sound of it, they will stuff it full of rubber, foam rubber or something like that. So that you don't have the sound, you just have the slap of the hammer against it. So anyway, that is a way to mic a drum set. Good luck. So you're going to need 2 booms of some sort to get the mics up there where they need to be. Any questions on that?
3 channels coming from just that one instrument.
Yeah, so 3 mics. This mic, by the way, the mic getting the bass drum, if it's close to the drum, a lot of power there. It's very intense. So it's a microphone that has to be able to handle a high sound level without distortion. And that's one of the characteristics of microphones that you would read. What's the maximum sound pressure that it can handle? So you wouldn't want to put a real sensitive mic there, but they actually make mics for that purpose that are bass mics to get that. You've done a lot of that. What can you add?
Not much, except good luck.
Yeah. Yeah, good luck is needed, yeah. because you know the mic's relative to the cymbals and relative to the snare drum, et cetera, to try to get the right balance by getting the mic in exactly the right position, et cetera, is tricky. And you can mic everything separately, but then you have, how many mics would you have? You'd have to have about 8 or so.
5, 6, 7, 8.
And then you'd have to mix it down. You usually go with 3 mics like this, or?
Yeah, or just one overhead and pray.
Yeah. All right. All right. I have a little video here how to make a stand-up interview. This is a show that we do. Let's see if it will play. And I'm not hearing any sound, which I should have checked this out beforehand. All right. Obviously, I don't have this set up correctly. Anyway, you can see it from when we get to it.
Got an HDMI?
Just a second.
That's really gorgeous.
What's that?
Gorgeous.
Okay, this is Susan Wheeler, and she has a handheld mic there. That is an Omni, and she's talking about. Whoops. Let me do that. Oh, lost it anyway. She's got a handheld mic which is wireless, and it's a long-handled mic for the purpose of being able to reach. It's an omnidirectional mic, so she just has to get it more or less in near the person. It doesn't have to point to the person. So a unidirectional microphone, if the person came in too much from the side, you wouldn't get a good recording. But with an Omni, it doesn't matter where they are positioned relative to the direction to the mic. So almost always, if you're doing a stand-up interview, you want an omnidirectional mic, and then you move back and forth. The mic serves 2 purposes. It picks up the sound, obviously, but also the interviewer kind of controls the interview, because when the mic is closer to the interviewee, it's time to talk, and when the mic comes back to the interviewer is a visual cue that you shut up now because I'm going to talk. So it's a very popular technique, and that could be a wired mic or a wireless mic. If you're doing this in a public place where the mic cord could be a hazard, probably better to use a wireless mic. But my general rule on wireless mics is avoid them when you can, because you can get interference and that sort of thing. All right, let's take a little break. We'll break for 10 minutes and. All right. When you go to buy a microphone, what are you looking for? What are the hallmarks of the quality of a microphone? Well, we've already talked about the different types, and we have said that the moving coil type of microphone, also called dynamic, is the cheapest. They're rugged, reliable. They require no power. There's definitely a place for moving coil microphones, but they're also the least sensitive. And so if you're trying to record subtle sounds or complicated sounds or sounds from a distance, they're not going to be as good. If you're recording the human voice up close, they're fine. And you can buy a good quality moving coil microphone somewhere in the price range of probably $30 to $100. You could spend more, but I don't think there's any point to it. And then we have the other main alternative of microphones, and that is condenser microphones like this one, or the more recent kind of condenser which doesn't require a voltage between the two plates because it's got a built-in charge, and that's called an electret. Again, their prices probably start, these are electrets, most of what I've shown you are electrets. They're the most common kind of microphone today. The microphone on your phone is an electret. They're everywhere. And they can be very, very small. They can be good sized. And priced anywhere from, I suppose, $20 to probably $1,000 if we want to go there. But again, in the price range of probably you can get really good electret microphones, certainly under $200 for some of the top ones. Let's say you want to buy a really good microphone. What specifications would you look to? That's what we're going to think about for a minute, and that is certainly frequency response. Now this chart here graphs the entire range of human hearing as far as frequency, that is pitch. We can hear as low as about 20 hertz or cycles per second up to about 20,000 hertz. So these are all the sounds that humans are capable of hearing. Well, you and I are not able to hear probably this top half here from 10,000 to 20,000 hertz because over time as we age our hearing does not improve, but we especially lose the high end of it, which is not that much of a problem because there's not much up there, okay? So the top 10,000 to 20,000, that's one octave actually, and not much to worry about up there, the fact that we can't hear it. So the very best microphones are going to pick it up. The lesser microphones, like this is probably about an average microphone. The lesser microphones are not going to pick that up very much. This red line shows what sounds this microphone will pick up. The higher, the more it picks up, the lower, the less. So this one is not going to do very well at this top octave, 10,000 and above. For most purposes, you won't be able to tell the difference. Okay, there's very little. The difference is that if you're listening to a violin, a person with good hearing would be able to tell if that octave was there or not. You and I wouldn't know because we've lost that top thing. So a teenager, if they haven't deafened themselves already and they're on their way, would be able to hear it, but most of us couldn't. And it's not that they can hear those sounds, it's that it contributes to the clarity of the higher frequencies. Okay, so it doesn't matter very much. And so this microphone, for most purposes, it doesn't matter. Let's go down to the other end.
So this is a weird question.
Yeah.
How do you know? I mean, do they put it on a meter or something? I mean, how do you know that?
How do they measure this?
Yeah.
Well, they take the microphone into an anechoic chamber, and they put a sound source in front of it that's been calibrated, and they have calibration mics that are very accurate, and then they run the whole frequency spectrum in front of them and see how they respond. So that's how they get a chart like this. Now, most microphones, you're not going to get a chart like this. If you pay a few $100s for a microphone, it'll come with one of these and maybe made for that particular mic. They might test each mic. But generally, it's going to be a generic one for all mics of that model. They're not going to vary enough to matter. Okay, so you might get a chart like this or not. Okay, let's go down to the other end. At the low end, 20 hertz, there is almost no sound there that you care about. A really low bass drum might have some sound down there. Those big Japanese drums, you know, drums like this, it probably makes them sound. The lowest pipe on a huge pipe organ might go down there, but you can't hear it. You can only feel it. I mean, your experience is not really one of hearing it so much as feeling the vibration of sound. Okay, so there's not much that matters. There's no speech sounds below about around 80 or so hertz. So you can see that this microphone does not pick up the low end very well. Big deal, doesn't matter very much. Okay, if you're going to record a bass instrument, it would matter. But if you're recording the human voice, it doesn't matter, because there's very little below about 100 that you have a very deep bass singer or something like that might be coming down into around 80 or something like that. Okay, now an ideal microphone would pick up all frequencies equally, so that line would be a straight, flat line. Okay, and this, as you can see, is not an ideal microphone. But it's flat relatively through the middle part where it matters most. And then it has a little boost, and this may be built in because this is going to give the speech a little bit more clarity. So they may have deliberately raised it here to make it sound better for speech. So the very best condenser microphones are going to be flat like a board from low to high. But ordinary mics for most purposes are probably going to have a rise in this area, because for speech that's going to sound a little more clear. So would I buy this microphone? Probably not for music, but for speech, it's fine.
Tell me that you introduced this curve as the human hearing
Yeah.
curve. So this is,
Well, no, this is not the human hearing curve. No, the human hearing curve is very different. I don't have a picture of it.
Ideal, there is no such thing. They can pick up everything now.
The human hearing curve, we do not hear bass well at all, which is good because there's a lot of power in the bass. Okay, so the human hearing at the low end, it's very, very low, and then it comes up, and it's not a flat curve.
no, I understood that. I started out thinking that's probably.
That's what this was. Yeah. Yeah, this is a curve for a microphone.
Okay.
Yeah. So the flatter the better. Now, the specification may be given something like this, plus or minus 3 decibels from 100 to 10,000 hertz.
I have a question.
What's that? Yeah.
I've never understood that concept of the plus or minus. What is that?
Yeah. Well, it varies. If you were to draw a line at the middle point of this, it would be within 3 decibels one way or the other of that line. Variation is not more than 3 decibels up or 3 decibels down.
That decibel is a relative.
It's a
Comparison.
sound loudness
Yeah.
measure. Yeah. It's actually quite a 3 decibels is quite a bit actually,
Yeah.
but yeah.
So the tolerance is 3 per, like
This,
Yeah, it's
not percent, it's 3 decibels.
3 decibels.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go into that too much. 3 decibels is a change that it's at least, if you were listening to music at a certain level and they raised it by 3 decibels, you would just barely be able to notice it. So, okay. Oh, moving on to the next one. So one specification of a microphone is the frequency response. That's what we're talking about. In other words, you wouldn't want something that's way high, strange shape in the middle. In the middle, it needs to be fairly flat. Up, 2 ends, not so much, because we don't use that sound very much. So the frequency response is important. And the other specification that's important for any mic that has an amp in it, which is any electret or condenser microphone, is going to have noise. that amplifier will create electronic noise. That's the downside of having an amplifier. We have to have the amplifier because without it, we'd have to amplify it later and there'd be even more noise. So this reduces the total noise of the system, but it adds some noise of its own. And so you can see here that there's this, I'm pointing to it here, you can't see it. There's this represents the ongoing speech or music or whatever we're recording. And then this red represents the noise, not that's in the room, not the acoustic noise, but the electronic noise.
Like a hiss or?
What's that?
Like a hiss or?
Yeah, it's a hiss. That's what it sounds like to us. We hear it as a hiss. It's across the whole electronic spectrum, but we hear it as a hiss, more like a shh type of sound. Okay. Now, so this is the signal to noise ratio in decibels. How far below the sound that we record that we want is the noise. The noise will be here. Any microphone will have some self noise, as it's called. It's going to create a little bit of noise. Is it going to create enough noise to be bothersome? Is the question. Okay. The greater the signal to noise ratio here, or the less self noise there is, the better. So this is the more important thing that you pay for in the quality of a microphone, and that is the quality of the amplifier that's built into it. A good microphone will have a very expensive and high quality amplifier built into it, and the noise will be less. A cheap mic, some of the early Electrets were terrible. You know, their noise floor would be up here somewhere. A very, very obvious hiss whenever you were using the mic. Well, that makes it pretty useless if it's got a continuing hiss all the time. So you want the hiss to be below what you notice, okay, and that sort of makes a difference as to what the music is, because if you're recording music, that can mask out and hide the hiss, so you wouldn't notice it at all, probably. Even if it were fairly loud, you wouldn't notice it because the music is going to drown it out. But if you're recording speech where there are pauses, you'll notice the hiss in the pauses of the speech. So it matters more for speech. Okay. So this is the spec you want to look at. This is called self-noise. This will be, for a good mic, around 20 decibels sound pressure level. It would be how, if this noise were in a room, how loud would it be? And a room with a noise of 20 decibels, I gave you this earlier, sound pressure level. You can see it's down here. It would be like a quiet basement. So the amount of sound that the mic itself is contributing would be like as loud a sound you would expect to hear in a quiet basement, which is how much? Unnoticeable, probably. Okay, for the most part, you would never notice it. The sound is there, but you don't notice it. Okay, so this is an important specification for a really good mic for voice, speech, that sort of thing. You want this noise floor to be as little, or the signal noise. So you see they measure the same thing. Self noise is how far above zero is that noise, or how far below your normal sound is the noise.
So is the 20 just a relative measurement? Because 20 decibels, I mean, like if you increase the sound of something 20 decibels, that's a pretty significant.
It is, yeah.
So it's just a relative?
So it's, well, the way they define this is it's equivalent to 20 noise, to the self noise of the mic. In other words, the noise that the mic itself contributes is equal to what you would get from 20 decibels sound pressure levels, so 20 decibels of audio in a room, which on that handout they defined as much sound as you would expect in a quiet basement, which is not much.
Right,
Okay, but that will be contributed by the microphone itself. So this would be not the very best possible microphone, but a good microphone. Lesser microphones with less, might have 30 or more decibels of soft noise, in which case they're not going to publish it. So if you buy an inexpensive microphone, they're not going to tell you any of this. Well, first of all, they think they would be right about this, that most people don't know what that means. But the people who know are not going to buy their microphones because they go, oh, that's awful. So the better quality microphone, more expensive microphone, is going to publish this information. So anyways, so frequency response and noise are the two things how you judge the quality of a microphone. Got it? Okay, let's move on. Okay, I want to get through this, at least get started on this today, because this is really, really important. Phase cancellation. Now imagine, so we have a graph here of sound coming out of a speaker and being listened to by a person over here. So the sound is moving this direction, the sound wave is moving across. And then we have a graph of the sound wave, and you can see that here the particles are closer together, the air is compressed slightly, and here the particles are farther apart, so the air is somewhat rarefied. So that's shown here in the graph. The pressure is less here, the pressure is higher here. Now, imagine that in this stream of sound moving out, we have two microphones. We have mic 1 and mic 2. And notice that mic 1 happens to be a distance where the sound is, the sound wave at that moment is high, and mic 2 happens to be at a place where the wave is low. So the wave is going back and forth and back and forth. So at this moment, we're freezing it a moment in time. At this point, this mic is catching the peak, this mic is catching the valley. What happens if you mix the mics together into the same channel?
They cancel.
What's that?
They cancel.
They cancel, exactly. Okay?
Does the sound go away? What happens?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, in a real world, because there'd be reverb and noise in the room and that sort of thing, it wouldn't happen perfectly. The sound wouldn't be absolute silence, but the sound is going to largely disappear. Okay. So if these mics are a particular distance apart, at this frequency, they will cancel each other out, being mixed into the same channel. At a different frequency, they might both add. You might end up, if you change the frequency, how close these are together, you might end up with a peak here at the same time that you have a peak there, and then they would be twice as loud. Okay? So the rule is 1 mic per source going into the same channel. The mics don't interfere with each other, but when you mix them into the same audio channel, you have a phase cancellation. Okay, so that can be a real problem. Now, what if you want to make a stereo recording? So you have 2 mics, and you have one singer who's being picked up with the 2 mics, and the singer is not going to be precisely in the middle between the mics. So you have 2 mics out here for a stereo recording of one singer, and then you mix them together into one channel to make a monaural copy of that, then you're going to have phase cancellation. Okay, it doesn't sound good. It sounds like a hollow sound. Okay, so how do you avoid that? Well, if you want to make a stereo recording, that's what this configuration is for. Now here you have two mics that are so close together that there's no difference in the time. It would be like we take this mic and put it right here, but one mic is pointed that way and the other mic is pointed that way, so we pick up stereo, but it's coherent as far as mono is concerned. You can mix these two together. So this is a formula we sometimes use. Other mics like this, and we would put them like this, okay, so that they're picking up stereo of a choir or a group or something like this. Now you can mix these two together because these are essentially at the same place, space-wise, okay. But if they're like this, and then you mix them to mono, you'll get some phase cancellation. So getting them together is the answer to that. Now we have another problem. I think I can do it in 5 minutes left, 6 minutes. If I can get it to move to the next slide. There we go. We can get phase cancellation with one mic, unfortunately. And you can see the problem here. We have two paths. So we have phase cancellation due to reflection. Okay, so we have from the speaker here to the microphone, the sound goes directly, but also bounces off the lectern here, and this takes a little longer, so now it's slightly delayed, and in this case, this would likely, at some frequencies, would cause phase cancellation. So you're going to get that hollow sound. So we usually depend on a rule of 3. If the reflected path is at least 3 times as long as the direct path, the phase cancellation is not enough to be bothersome. But if the direct path and the reflected path are too similar, they will cancel. So this obviously is one place, but we're more likely. Let's say that I'm doing a demonstration. Well, we'll say this is a blackboard. I'm doing a demonstration here, and I have microphone out here, and I'm pointing to things here. Well, we have a direct path, and we have a reflected path off the whiteboard or the blackboard into the mic. Or we have a mic on a table like this, and we have a direct path and a reflected path into the mic. Okay, so how do we avoid that? The enemy is this. A short mic stand, you don't want that because the direct path and the reflected path, if you have this out in front of you a little ways, is going to be too similar. You're going to get phase cancellation. So you need a taller mic stand so that the direct path, the reflected path is now long enough. Better to have the mic up here so that the reflected path is really quite a bit longer than the direct path.
Couldn't you also handle that by putting a absorptive surface?
Yeah, in some radio studios, they have a table in the studio that is actually there's a cloth on it, but if you pick up the cloth, it's a perforated metal, and so it's so there's no solid surface to reflect against. So it looks like a solid table, but it isn't. So that works. Here's another idea that came out a few years ago, and that is what happens if you put the mic right on the reflective surface. And this is called a boundary mic. There are several people who make it. This is an Audio-Technica, I think. No, this is a Shure, American maker. So the mic element in here is extremely close to the table, so that the direct path and the reflected path are the same length essentially. There's less than even a 1/4 inch difference between. So if you put this microphone on the table, you get rid of the phase cancellation from reflection because the reflected path just contributes to it. They're too close together to be considered differently. Does that make sense? So this boundary mic is a wonderful thing if you have a group of people sitting around a table and you want to have a microphone to pick up the whole bunch of them. This microphone, this one isn't omnidirectional, but if you had an omnidirectional microphone on a stand like this, that would seem to be an ideal situation, but you'd have all of these reflections. This is better, right on the table itself. The boundary mic, it really works well to avoid the reflections that you have there. Okay, any questions on that?
Yeah, what is the reflected sound? I've noticed in editing the All-in-One, sometimes in the same situation, the same set, some of the sound is much more echoey than others. Is that due to this?
It could be. It could be. Yeah. It's. People describe it as a hollow sound.
Yeah.
Some of those frequencies are missing. If you were to look at the frequency graph of it, when you have a phase cancellation situation, the frequency graph is like this, up and down and up and down. Certain frequencies are doubled, certain frequencies are cut.
Wow.
And so this gives you a phasey, hollowish sound. Yeah. And of course, little or lot, if the reflected path is longer, you have less of the problem. If the two paths are almost the same length, you have more of the problem. If it's exactly the same length as in this, then you have no problem. But yeah.
Lately, I hear echoes when people are singing.
Yeah.
I thought it was to put them on key, because they're singing off key.
Well, that's a different problem. And when you have people singing off key, that actually, if they're able to hear the key, hear the music, to match pitch, you have to be able to hear yourself and the pitch that you're trying to match. You have to be able to hear both. And typically you have the singer standing in front of a band singing. She can't hear herself because the band is too loud. She can't tell if any noise is coming out or not. In that case, she'll sing way off key because she doesn't know what note she's singing. She's trying to guess and get it in so she has to be able to hear herself. So we might put that into her earphones so she can hear herself and the instruments. Or we might put it into a floor monitor, which throws her sound back to her so she can hear it. But if she can't, but if we don't have one of those or they're not working well, and she can't hear herself, she will sing off pitch. She or he, depending.
So we hear an echo, right?
Well, the difference between an echo and a reverb, so it's probably more reverb, but is 1/10 of a second. we don't discern it as a separate sound unless it's greater than a tenth of a second. So all the time, as you're listening, sound is bouncing off every surface and coming. So it comes to you directly from my mouth, but it also comes off. It bounces off everything and comes to you. So that's reverb. If it's less than a tenth of a second, if there's a surface, a reflective surface so far away, 100 feet or something like that, that the sound comes back more than a tenth of a second later, then it's an echo. It's the same thing. It's just we hear it as a separate sound if it's more than about a tenth of a second. Yeah. All right. Any further questions?
Does the noise canceling thing happen just, I mean, accidentally, you know, I mean, people put mics up and they don't realize it, you know, is it very common? I'd never heard of it, so.
Yeah. Yeah, as far
Like
as
in churches and, you know, that sort of thing. So, like if you're using a PA, does the noise cancel on the PA or just on a recording? If the-
no, on the PA too. Yeah.
I've never, I mean, I've heard the phrase, but.
Yeah. As far as phase cancellation, yeah. Yeah. Well, it happens. It happens all the time in ways big and small that you probably don't recognize or notice.
So it may not totally cut the sound out.
Oh no. It would never, in a real world situation, never totally cut the sound out because you wouldn't have the precise. The levels would have to be exactly the same to match, and there'd have to be no reverb coming in for it to cut the sound out. And you can only do that in an echoing chamber probably, but in the real world there'll be it'll be a percentage of the sound, not 100%.
Gotcha. Now I understand.
Yeah. All right. We'll wrap this whole thing up next time.
The clapboard.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, the
I'm here every Thursday.
standard is if you're giving a tail slate, you hold it upside down so the editor knows it's a tail slate, because if you see a slate like this, the editor going fast forward thinks it's the beginning of the next thing, and so that can be confusing. Okay.
Did you get